today about how to make our life like a fairy tale. And I am so excited about this topic. I have been driving the last 24 hours through Maine from PEI, Prince Edward Island, for those of you who don't know, and it has felt like a dream this whole this whole time. It is absolutely beautiful. It is magical in one sense, and I've really actually been thinking a lot about this concept of making our life like a fairy tale. And I want to talk about this because I've had people mention to me, man, your life is really beautiful. And I've also talked to other entrepreneurs who have mentioned, I actually feel a little bit reticent to talk about how wonderful my life is and how good my life is, because I get kind of a strange response from people that are close to me, even my family. And so I want to talk about this dynamic dance of creating the lives that we want, creating a life that truly is magical, and also engaging with others who may not feel like their life is that way. And it's really interesting because when you actually analyze a fairy tale, it often starts with something rather tragic, or something towards the end that's rather tragic that you have to overcome. Every single story has some hurdle, has some obstacle. In every story, there's a villain. In every story, there's a hero. In every story, there's a guide. In every story, there is something that happens that derails the hero. And so when we think about making our life a fairy tale, it does not by any means that mean that it's perfect. And so then the question is, well, what does it look like to create my life and design my life and write my story? So when we think about the role that we play in our life, so many of us actually don't play the hero. We play the guide to other people's stories. Even I was in the Known Founder with an executive, and we were really diving deep into getting to know him and getting to know his past and how that shows up in the present, and then what's the potential, what's the new target that we want to aim at, so that we let go of the past and then aim for something new and something that's exciting, something that's in alignment with his calling. And in our diving in, we just found that so much of his life was actually focused on being the savior, but to other people. And he had never actually taken the time to be the guide and be the savior for his own self and for his own little boy in him that got stunted at growing at different ages because of different traumatic experiences. And for at whatever age something traumatic happened that we have yet to work through, we are emotionally stunted in that place until we retroactively go back and help that little kid heal and process from whatever that was, whether it was the little kid in us who sat there and watched mom and dad yelling, the little kid in us who sat there and watched this car wreck that happened right in front of us, whether it's that little kid in us that saw thing after thing or received physical punishment, or whatever the traumatic moment was, we effectively are stuck in that moment in time until we go back and heal that little kid in us. And so this concept of being savior and being guide, that's actually very right and true. That's in our DNA as human beings, is to go and rescue and save. And we need to be doing that for ourselves first. So before we can accurately, and I would even say freely, do that for somebody else and freely love them and freely be that savior and guide, we need to do that for ourselves. And the reality also is they need to do that for themselves. So isn't it perhaps the most loving thing to teach someone else how to be their own savior and how to be their own guide? And when I say savior, it's like that's that familiar term of the savior complex. And so it's not necessarily, I'm not talking about a religious sense of savior in any regard. I'm talking about that desire to go and rescue, that desire to go and save. Every human being has that in them. And that actually is a very masculine element to the human being. Every single human has the right brain and the left brain, the masculine and the feminine. And it is so important that we learn how to activate both parts of us, because otherwise we're going to be too heavy in the rescuing, too heavy in the saving, that we actually strip other people of their power, or we're too nurturing, too tender, too empathetic, and then we actually strip ourselves of power. So this is this dynamic element when it comes to analyzing the whole human, but also when it comes to writing our story. because there's multiple roles that you and I will play when we act as the hero of our life, but also the guide and savior in our own life, but also the story maker. Y'all, we are making our stories. We are with the things that we think about and see in our mind's eye. That's what often what happens. There's a story that that I just think about when I talk about the concept of what we think about is often what ends up happening. I was late to a coffee meeting. It was someone that I had never met them in person. We had met online. I actually had spoken to the mastermind that he was in, and he reached out to me and was like, "Hey, we're in the same area. Would you like to get together?" And I said, "Sure." So I was driving to meet him, and I was late. And I got into my car feeling rushed. And I was like, wouldn't it be the worst thing ever if I rear-ended him? And I'm not kidding you, 15 seconds later, I rear-ended somebody. And I was like, oh my gosh, I just made this happen. I was like, there's no way it's him. So we pull off into the parking lot next door. And I get out and I'm just like, already, I'm so sorry, I'm late. And then the person who gets out is the gentleman I was supposed to meet. And I had never met this man before. It was so wild, y'all. I manifested this car accident. It was so weird. It was so weird. I literally sat there and I was like, what if I did that? Oh my. So the thing is, it's not just what we think about. It's taking an initial idea that's kind of out there still in our brain, but we think about it, but then, man, we take that thought and we fixate on it. It's the fixation that allows and feeds the manifestation. If we have a thought, and this has happened to me many times, where something comes into my brain and I'm like, whoa, I do not want to think about that. That's not who I am. I've had thoughts before where I'm like, where did that come from? That's like dark, or that's not in alignment with my values. Get the hell out of Dodge. And so the concept of mastering our minds is so vitally important. And actually, I love it. Always comes full circle, doesn't it? This morning, I'm driving. I have my top down on my convertible. I'm in my little Stang, and I'm just literally loving life. And I was like, this is amazing. I love this world. And I called Delta Airlines because I want to move my flight back a couple hours. For those of you who are not in Casa Muslim's 3X Freedom community, go join his school community, 3X Freedom. He has a big launch today for the paid community. So I'm in that paid community. And so I was like, I have to be there for kind of how he's rebranding 3X Freedom. So I was on the phone with Delta Airlines, and Jerry gets on the phone. I'm like, hey, Jerry, how are you? She says, I'm good. How are you? I'm like, great. You know, Jerry, I'm driving through Maine and I am just having the best time. I'm loving the trees are changing. This is almost peak in New England and I'm dying. We live in the most beautiful world. Jerry like goes off. She's like, I know. This is the most beautiful world we live in. Like, isn't God amazing? And so she just goes on this little rant. But it was really cool because as she started going, there was something in me where I was like, okay, like this is not going to be an efficient conversation. And I just felt myself, I actually physically like settled into my seat for this because I was kind of like sitting up and like ready to go, like excited about my drive and the beauty, but also ready to get this conversation done to the point of why I'm calling. But as she started really expounding, she told me she lives in Georgia and she lives in the backwoods. And so she's nestled under all of these trees and she gets to see the foliage change. So I literally physically settled into my seat and cozied up for this conversation. And she ended up getting emotional. She's like, I'm getting misty-eyed. She said, we were meant to enjoy this world. We were designed and created to enjoy it. And she kept emphasizing enjoy, enjoy, enjoy. And she said, we were not meant to live with our minds so flooded and so busy and so filled. She said, we were not created for that. We were created to enjoy the physical world. And man, it hit me like a ton. Y'all, the last 12 days, I've effectively given myself a digital detox to an extent. From 5 to 8 a.m. and 5 to 8 p.m., I have not allowed any inputs from music, even books, other people. And that's been my time to get vertically aligned, to just be whether that's walking, going to the beach a couple of nights and watching the sunset, whether that's been honestly just creating. I worked a lot on the craft and calling last week. I got so clear on my mission. I got so clear on what I'm building and why I'm building it and who I'm building it for. And the last week and a half, man, it actually was really, really hard for the first few days. It felt like I was going through a detox. I felt like I was going through a withdrawal. Like I felt this like something's missing, and it's the input, it's a stimulus. It is the distraction. And it's also the mental busyness, the mental fillings that take up so much of our brain space that then we actually don't have space to think up and create from within. The intuary, the intuition. Intuary is the Latin root of intuition. It means to be taught from within. Intuary is its own input in and of itself. But if my brain is overloaded with external inputs, I have no space, no room for internal inputs. I also lose appreciation, gratitude, a sense of meaning for everything. Like I'm looking around me, there's this beautiful garden over there. It's so pretty. And I just sat there without my phone. I just sat there. But I wasn't able to do that a week ago. I really had to move through this process of detoxing and almost this withdrawal period to allow for my spirit, soul, and self to sit in the discomfort of peace. And in that discomfort of peace, then creation blossoms. And it's not just creation. We can actually have the real inputs from intuition, from taught from within, intuition from revelation on a spiritual level, in also being taught like from the inputs of creation in and of itself. Like that's what's so cool, is that we get to really see and have our inputs be from the creator himself and from the creator within. But if we're so like claustrophobic with all the external inputs, we will never, ever really be able to create something new. And so with this whole time of talking about creating our life as a fairy tale, I had this thought while I was driving this morning. I've just been feeling so excited and so happy. I made a decision last week that actually it was 3 days ago. I made a decision on Tuesday. I made a decision on Tuesday. My parents they booked at the beginning of this year a European cruise. They're flying into Rome on Wednesday next week, and they are going to Greece. They're going to Malta, Cannes. They're going all these amazing places, and they invited me to go. And I was seriously thinking about it. And then I found out my younger sisters were going. And I was like, okay, I don't know. Like, I don't know if this is going to work with my schedule. And so I've just been kind of musing on it. And I had decided not to go. But I just felt this regret. And I was just like, man, I'm going to miss. I wish I could see Dad enjoying Italy, especially because he's just wanted to travel so much in his life. And this is his first time. This is my mom's first time. And even one of my sister's first time going to Europe. So it's just, man, I was feeling this longing, and it was wild. I started going deeper on this concept of eulogy. So when I turned 30, I wrote my eulogy at the end of my life of who do I want to be at the end of my life. But over the last year, I've really been leaning into my role in relationships with other people. And like, who do I want to be in relationship to them? What's the ideal for mother-daughter? What's the ideal for father-daughter? What's the ideal for sister-sister? And then also sister-sister for each person, each sister. I mean, I've got 5 sisters, and 2 brothers, and the third brother-in-law. So there's just a lot of dynamics here. The more I've been leading into relationships, I had this realization last week that I actually want to create my eulogy for every single one. If I was to die tomorrow, how would I want my dad to remember me? How would I want my mom to remember me? Because they're all going to remember me very differently based on their experience with me. And as I dove into this, I realized I want to go on this cruise. I will regret it for the rest of my life. I don't think I have a single regret. I will regret it if I do not go with them. And as I made that decision, all of a sudden, I felt like I came alive. It was like, yes, that's right. And so as I was driving this morning, this concept of creating the story, making our life a fairy tale. The things that are not sitting well with us often are a sign that we need to move in a different direction. So when I made the decision to go on this 10-day cruise, 11-day cruise, 10-night cruise with my family, immediately it felt so right. I felt so excited. And ever since, I've just felt so aligned. And y'all, the things that are making us feel out of alignment, going a little bit to the right or a little bit to the left, pay attention, because for so much as I was thinking about this cruise I'm just so sad I won't be there with dad and mom, that's not something to overlook. That's something to lean into. Why do I actually feel this way? This three-part process of slowing down, leaning in, and asking why. Anytime we feel a little bit out of alignment, anytime we feel a sensation in our body that's a little bit uncomfortable, that's our sign to slow down, lean in, and ask why. Because what I knew was that, oh, I'm so sad not to be with them, but I didn't ever take the time to slow down and lean in and ask why. Of why do I really feel sad about this? And the reason when I really sat with it was, I will regret it for the rest of my life. And thank God that I took the space over the last 12 days to detox my mind so that I had space to even analyze this question of what is the eulogy I want my dad to say about me in his relationship to me if I was to have my life end tomorrow. And so when it comes then to this question of writing our life as a fairy tale, every fairy tale has good and bad moments. Every fairy tale has the villain. Every fairy tale has the hero, the guide, and ultimately the author of the fairy tale. And this is where we get to be the author. The more clearly we have defined where we're headed, then as the life in and of itself, that which we cannot control, ebbs and flows, we have also defined these moments along the way, these hallmarks. Y'all, I forget where this originally came from, but man, it was so good. In childhood, you have multiple highlights. You've got your birthday, you've got school starting, school ending, the first day of summer, you've got friends' birthday parties, you have milestone after milestone. And as we get older, those milestones actually start moving farther and farther between. Okay, you've got 25, you've got 30, 35, 40. So it's 5 years apart. And all the other milestones are predicated in your child's success. Their milestones become your milestones. But if we have effectively created a eulogy and path for our life, we then can self-impose milestones for us that indicate success along the way, that indicate our own elements of, okay, I've reached this KPI, I've reached this milestone. And I have created these milestones for myself, but now it's okay, what are these milestones in relationship? And I realized one of the things that I actually really want my sisters to say about me specifically, is that I wasn't easily offended and I didn't take things personally. And that's actually something for me to grow in. I think that I have this large degree of empathy that anytime they are upset or unhappy, my empathy, to the dark side of empathy, is codependency. And so what can end up being, I talked at the very, very beginning that when we don't have, when we don't have empathy, we lose our power. And so, man, I wish I could remember what I said. I don't think that was what I said. Something along the lines of, if we have too much empathy, we lose our power in that regard. And so that's how I've operated a lot in my relationship, specifically with my family, where I had this massive amount of empathy, but it also led to me stripping of my power and feeling kind of very vulnerable in an over excessed way, in an unhealthy way, where I was actually dependent on their emotional response to me to validate me and my worth. That is entirely unhealthy. It strips me of power, places so much pressure on them and so much blame on them. Oh, I hear church bells. How pretty. I'm in Portsmouth. It's just so lovely. New Hampshire. I just love church bells. But y'all, that's where this whole element of creating our life with intention, creating milestones also in relationships that will lead and orient our growth, that will lead and orient our actions. So I want to be so close with my parents, and I don't want to miss key milestones in their life, because again, we never know. We never know when that's the last day. And so I'm so happy for how I've led the last 2 or 3 years with them. I've been so intentional, and realizing that's what I want, that's my ideal with them. That's ultimately what encouraged me to go on this cruise with them. So the more clear we are about what constitutes success in different relationships, what constitutes success for us ourselves on an individual level, and then we can self-inject milestones throughout it, and we live so much more of a fulfilling, vibrant life. So whether that's, I even coming up to PEI, like self-injecting little milestone stops along the way. So I found the most charming, idyllic Hallmark towns on my drive up. That sparked so much joy. And I intentionally got off of the highway and drove Route 1 through all of these adorable towns. And each one of those was injecting joy into my day that otherwise would have just been a little less colorful, a little less joyful. But if we do not, with intention, self-inject joy, we are going to be at the mercy of what happens all around us. So the way that we do that is by knowing where we're heading, knowing what we love, what we enjoy, what we want. So that does depend on us actually taking some time to identify what that is. But y'all, if you don't know, my therapist 4 years ago asked me, "Well, what do you need?" And I said, "Nothing. I don't need anyone. I don't need anything. I'm good. I'm self-sustaining, self-sufficient. I don't need anything." He said, "Well, you need water, you need food." And I was like, dang it. And so over the years, I've really come to understand the things that make me me. But the way that I've done that is actually by returning to childhood and realizing, man, those were the things that were really life-giving in childhood. And play. I love play. I love fun. And I love beauty. That's another thing too, where it actually felt like a very brave thing. And I put brave in air quotes because it's, in one sense, when you look at the whole of mankind, it's not that brave. But for me, it felt brave to wear a bow. I love bows and pretty things. And for the majority of my 20s, I wore black to keep myself safe and almost like not elicit any kind of attention for any kind of a judgment. Because if my worth was so intrinsically tied to what they, the proverbial they, thought, let me just be as obsequious and small as possible so that I don't elicit any room for judgment. Because in our closest relationships, if those are unhealthy and those are unsafe, we think, well, they know me better than anyone. They're judging me. Their judgments must be accurate because they see me better than anybody. But if we see ourselves the most, then we can be our own advocate. And we can actually say, you know what, I hear what you're saying. We can have empathy for their experience, yet we still have our power. We're still owning our experience and owning what we know to be true. So the equal balance with empathy and the ability to know what we want and lead from this place of within, intuary, that's the Latin root of intuition, that really keeps us safe. It serves as guardrails so that we can, yes, see the other person's experience, have the empathy for it, yet remain in the truth of what we know because we are so aligned and we've done the work to know what brings us joy. And then we can, with intention, craft this life that is beautiful, that is vibrant, that is vivacious. Y'all, I'm not even a mom yet, and I'm thinking about who do I want to be in motherhood and how do I need to prepare myself now to be that mom at 9 when they're 9 months old and sitting on the floor. I had that thought when I was in PEI this week. It was really hard to exist in peace. I had to effectively retrain my body that peace is a new metric of success. That doing a 45-minute yoga practice in the morning where I was like, this is so boring. Like, I'm not doing anything. I'm not being efficient. I don't have anything to show for this. That is a new KPI. The ability to just be and feel the peace and not be rushing to the next thing. And I just knew in that moment, I will need this when my child is sitting on the floor and I'm going to want anything else besides that moment because it's boring. But here's the beauty of after boring, like on the other side of boring, if we were to elevate the experience that we're having, moving up from boredom is beauty and creativity and a vibrant life. It's color. Below boring can often be kind of black and white. It's stagnant, it's stale, it's everyone else is telling me how to live. But if I allow myself to sit in the silence long enough, after that moment of discomfort, of boredom, or not really knowing how to entertain myself, then on the other side of that is beauty, creativity. And guys, our kids need this too. Our children need to learn how to play again. They need to learn how to think for themselves and how to dream big. And all of a sudden, on the other side of boredom is all of the possibilities, all of the dreaming. And so as I was driving through this little town in Maine, Camden, it was so beautifully decorated for autumn, so charming. I feel like I'm living a fairy tale life just in this moment. And yes, I lost my prince 3 years ago, and it was devastating. And it also opened the world up for me, should I so choose, to alchemize. And alchemy has to be one of the core lessons of how do we create a beautiful life. We have to learn how to alchemize everything, because other people, life itself, is going to give each one of us these moments, every single moment at a time. And let's put that moment out and analyze it and say, man, okay, what do I want? Guys, this is why we have to know what we want, because otherwise we're just going to live as a victim and be like, oh no, look at this moment. Or we can say, okay, this is happening. What do I want? I actually want joy right now. Or you know what? I actually want and need to grieve to move through this and get to the other side, because I know healing is on the other side. And at the ultimate, my highest ideal is that I can live in freedom. And for so long as I don't move through this grief, for so long as I don't move through this pain, I will never be free from it. Everything that is suppressed still resides within us. But once we allow it to come an overflow and come out, it's gone. That doesn't mean that there won't be layers that need to be released, but every single movement through that emotion is a release in and of itself. It's an outpouring. There's this verse, this beautiful verse in the Bible. It talks about the outpouring of the soul. And y'all, we need to let it out. We need to pour out our souls. That's the lymphatic system rinses and drains our body and cleanses our body from waste and toxins, almost like everything beneath the neck and down. The lymphatic system rinses and flushes our brain. What is rinsing and flushing our soul? That is the process of pouring it out and then filling it with intention through the inputs that we create, through the revelation input of the divine himself, through our own intuition being taught from within, through the input of creation being inspired. And I'm looking to the right because there's just this beautiful garden. I'll take you guys over after I wrap this show. I'll just hop on Facebook Live. Y'all, it is beautiful, the world that we live in. But if we're never allowing ourselves to be taught from the actual creation itself, we're missing a whole input that could really teach us and our children these core life lessons that otherwise we would be half fulfilled without. When I went to Italy and worked on the island of Ischia for a week, and I did this workaway program where I stayed for free in exchange and got all their amazing food in exchange for working in their vineyard for a couple hours every day. It was so fun. There's something about working in the soil. There's something about being outside, getting this sunlight. You know, y'all, we need to immerse ourselves in a digital detox, because we were not created for a digital world. We were created to experience a physical one. And it is so beautiful. So this concept of creating a beautiful life, it doesn't exist behind a screen. It exists. It exists in the visceral. And like, I think of, yes, here it is. When Steve Sims passed away, he was known as the Wizard of Oz. He was bigger than life. He was wonderful, just a dear friend. When he passed away, I was reminded of one of my very favorite songs. This lyric says, I want to live this one wild life and I want to rip it apart. There's something visceral. We take life, we feel it, it's tangible. We engage with life. How much of life are we actually engaging with or watching it pass us by? Much less so and much more devastating. Not just watching it pass by through the eyes of our children, but watching it pass by through the eyes of a social media influencer or from our colleagues or competitor or customer. How much are we actually engaging with life and building? Die with Zero talks about this, building a bank of experiences upon which we can look back and say, look Look at this beautiful, wonderful life. And in so doing, we take our children along with us. We take our family along with us. I'm so excited that I'm going on this cruise with my parents and my sisters, and they get to experience this whole new world, a whole new culture themselves. And so, y'all, it is possible to live a life we love. It's possible to design a life that we love, but we have to know what we want. We have to be so connected with our own internal inputs from the divine, inputs from creation itself, in order for us to then create. And we have to move beyond boredom. And boredom only comes when we're not getting the digital hits, because each digital hit is dopamine. And for so long as we have externally sourced dopamine hits, we'll never actually get to the point of stasis that thus then lends to beauty and creation and vivacity and just this whole new elevation of our own human spirit, because it's sourced from within, sourced from the divine, sourced from creation itself to then create. And in so doing, we create a beautiful life.